Hey, John Gilroy here. Did you know, according to the MIT Technology Review, the federal government has 26,000 websites? Today, we delve into user experience in those sites. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Our guest today is Angela Mercado, Senior Director of National Security and Safety at Rely Group, RELI Group. Pretty easy to find. User experience, Angela, 26,000 sites. Would you get that as a good guess on like Jeopardy or something? Who knew that?
I don't know that I would have gotten a number that large. I've spent a good chunk of my career trying to whittle that number down, right? And make
Yes.
things a little bit easier for folks. So hearing that number is a little disconcerting. But no, I think I would have missed that one on Jeopardy.
Yeah. I don't know, 140 agencies. I mean, really, that's a big number. And I think in the commercial world, if it's John's shoes, I want a real nice website. I want people to have as many shoes as they can. I got to make that site fast. I got to make it user friendly and mobile friendly and get the data quickly to them. And so when I think about user experience, I think about John's shoes or Angela's bowling balls or I don't know what, but I never think about Department of Transportation or any of the big ones out there, HHS.
Yeah.
Why even have this conversation today, Angela? Come on now, user experience.
All right. So I think what folks really need to remember when we think about government and the services that the government provides is that they're typically around life events, right? These are very human moments. People are dealing with the passing of a family member. They are dealing with the loss of a job and trying to figure out resources. How am I going to feed my family? How are we going to maintain healthcare? So it's really a lot broader than just, hey, we have a government website, we provide these services. It's thinking about the human on the other end and what they're going through and what they're looking for, what they're trying to accomplish when they come to a federal website or call, customer service center for an agency. So getting beyond just the, hey, we're HHS or hey, we're the VA and getting into the human side of it and the purpose for that agency.
And I think what they found in the commercial world is that if you improve user experience, you get more satisfied customers and you can sell more shoes, or in this case, maybe you can accept more applications from IH, or maybe close more use cases or have disputes over at the VA or something. So actually, I can be kind of supercilious about this, but really, I mean, if you're a VA and you have to have information about your user claim, I mean, you don't want to be on the phone for an hour. You want to have that user experience out, and that's what people are expecting. That's what they get at home, and that's what they expect from the government, isn't it?
That's exactly right. Industry, private sector has really set a high bar for customer service and customer experience. When you think about, the big names in the business, Disney, Amazon, they spend a small fortune. A big chunk of their budget goes to ensuring a positive experience for their visitors, for their customers. And folks expect that level of service from everyone now. I've been in this space for almost, 15 plus years on the federal side. And, we learned early on that if the government's not doing it in a way that users find accessible, then somebody else will. And then we lose that opportunity to be the ones that control that message, that have those experiences with those constituents, with those users. And, they lose that trust and that faith in the government and those agencies and their ability to give them the support they need.
Last week I was in Bethesda. I had lunch with a friend of mine whose son is a professional comedian, stand-up. So we're talking about Seinfeld, and everyone knows Seinfeld and Seinfeld episodes. And there's this one Seinfeld episode. I'm going to name names. Oh, no, you're not going to name names. So I'm not going to ask you to name names, Angela. Let's talk about agencies in general and maybe experience, maybe challenges they have. There's got to be a typical challenge that a federal agency has. I mean, they have more compliance requirements than others. They may be saddled with more legacy software than others. So let's talk about generic agency and some typical challenges they face and maybe where you folks might come in.
Yeah, certainly. So, I think the biggest challenge across the government, and it really is the thing that initiated the mandates and the executive orders around customer experience, was increasing trust with the government. That was definitely one of the biggest challenges the government was seeing. I think we can still see it every day in media and in, on social media and things. People just question whether the government is trustworthy. And they figured out pretty quickly that the quickest way to build trust and long-term build trust is that consistency in response. When you go to a federal website, when you call the call center, you get a consistent answer. You get that consistent information. It's personalized. It's responsive. It's empathetic. Again, going back to that point of people are coming for life events. There's usually some emotion around those, whether it's good or bad. But to really feel seen and understood in those interactions, it really helps to build that trust. On a more tactical, definitely, like you said, outdated tools, outdated websites, outdated systems. There's always that push to be migrating into the most current content management system or shifting to right now the big topic is AI. Everyone's trying to figure out where to, implement AI. To me, when it comes to customer experience and user experience, the technologies are just tools. AI is just a tool. It's a way to potentially get to those better customer experiences, to speed up those processes, to, tailor experiences, to maintain high standards of service and set those bars. But ultimately, with that goal to build those stronger relationships with constituents and build that trusted partnership.
Well, I'm not going to have you name names, but I'm going to name names. I'll get in trouble here. I was doing some research for this interview, and I read an interview with a gentleman named Joe Carter at HUD. And he said it. I mean, he sounded like Joe Shoes. It's like, no, we want to improve customer experience. So This is HUD. I mean, so the executive order that came out in 2021, and all the nerds know 1405, we all know that stuff. But it's trickling down, and people are starting to understand that even at HUD, at so many different agencies, people understand that one way to reduce costs for the agency is to provide data in a quickly and efficient manner. And this is kind of a tricky point. I mean, I've looked at your background on LinkedIn, and you got all kinds of tons of experience and training and everything else, but still you're thrown in a situation like at HUD, there's always going to be new systems and new opportunities to integrate and get that data to the user and have it be accurate, huh?
No, definitely. And I think that's an interesting point, and it goes back to your previous question about those challenges. And it's that within agencies and across the government, we're still incredibly siloed. We're trying to break down those silos of information, share data and share information across so we can have a more holistic view of what's happening within those agencies for customers. And then even spreading that across across agencies. We see initiatives like login.gov trying to simplify processes, trying to I don't know about you, John, but I have a really hard time remembering like the 85 different passwords I have to use for everyday life. To have one, two-factor authenticated login that I could get into, file my taxes and check the status of a claim, or that really it creates a smoother experience for folks. It's faster. There's not that frustration of which password was it flipping through, or I've jotted it down and hidden it away, and those kinds of things. I also love that you mentioned HUD, because one of the HUD directors of CX attended the UVA Customer Experience Leadership Institute with me earlier this year. So going back to your question, my background is all over the place. I have a bachelor's in English. My parents were very concerned I would not have a lucrative career once I graduated with that degree. Can't guarantee that it's lucrative in the experience world, but it definitely is a career. And, I think that background of liberal arts is really helpful in sort of holistically being able to look at things and view things broadly and break them down and understand. But there's been some really big changes in the last 15 to 20 years that I've been in this space. And there's now degrees you can get, but programs like UVA were really insightful for me. We had some really great attendees from across the federal government, from industry, and I was really excited to see quite a few folks participating from the state governments. That really these mandates have spread, and this belief that this is the right way to be serving up for our constituents all of these services was really, really impressive.
I think if you put this in perspective, you've been doing this for 15 years, been there, done there, got the T-shirt, you got all the black eyes, all that stuff, and you sharpened the sword. You go out and go, no, I'm gonna take a course and just figure out who's on first, because it changes that quickly. What? I mean, it's just it's a flood of AI. Okay, now how can AI help me improve the user experience for the people coming to NIH? And because there's no books on it. I've tried to get the books. There's no books written. And the only thing is like, well, Angela, what's been your experience in the last 6 months?
Yes. So what's been really exciting, and even just, in the most recent timeline, is looking at the maturing of CX. In 2021, when this mandate first came out, the executive order first came out, it was just, what do we even do, right? How do we get this data? How do we start getting folks together? And that was really the breaking down silos phase, identifying where that information lives, and getting the baseline. Now we're looking at how do we mature our practices. That's where we can really start thinking about expanding, breaking down those silos across agencies, figuring out, going back to my initial comment on life events, right? If somebody is looking for to file for Medicaid or assistance, they might also qualify for food stamps or other programs that aren't managed by CMS. So why can't we figure out a way for it to trigger? Oh, you qualify for this from this agency. You may also qualify for X, Y, and Z. Just like on Amazon, for example, right? You go to buy a book. Oh, people who bought this book also bought this book, they watched this video, whatever other recommendations are related. So it opens up a whole world of possibility. And that's where I think the view is really shifting as we're maturing this. Now we're 4 or 5 years into this, and agencies have really attached, to this, and you see it in their strategic plans. I mean, I've been excited looking, on the industry side, looking at proposals. It's being dropped in, CX is being dropped in all over the place as components. There's, people are really adopting this as an important facet across the board for all services that the government delivers.
Yeah, it really is. Many of my listeners listen to this podcast where they're walking their dog or at the gym or something. There's an article you can download, and I'll put the link to this article in the show notes. And it kind of hits the nail right on the head we're talking about. And the article is from Rely Group, and I'll put that link in the show group soon. Like I said, it's called "Crafting the Customer Experience: A Crucial Imperative in Government Contracting." And so that's if you want to go deeper, that's the place to start and get more information on you folks' help. I don't want to name names again. Let's go back to Jerry Seinfeld and naming
All
names.
Right.
GSA. I'm going to say GSA.
All right. Go
Get in trouble
GSA.
with them, An argument can be made that the GSA has been maybe a proponent of this whole innovation UI UX. So what's hot and what's not at the GSA?
So I will say, going back to that maturity comment, GSA put out in 2022 a GSA CX maturity model. And that's one of my favorite things to go back to, just to help assess, either for the agency or even honestly within industry partners ourselves, right? How are we doing? Are we practicing what we preach? And then being able to really measure and identify where our customers are on that, where the agencies that we support are in that maturity model, and how we can move them forward and mature their practices and their processes to be more customer centric. GSA also manages performance.gov, which is kind of the home for all things CX in this space, keeping track of what's happening. And so it's a place that I personally look to for guidance, for those standards, for the tools that are accessible to our customers, always trying to keep costs down for our customers. Budgets keep getting tighter and tighter. How can we be efficient? And GSA is a great partner in that sense.
My wife is a principal of school, and you think of schools just starting this week, you think of tests and evaluations. And these students get evaluated. They have national tests and little quizzes and whatnot. So where's the carrot? Where's the stick here? Let's say I pick an agency in Interior. And so there's a mandate from the government that says, hey, you have to improve user experience. Is there a grade? Is there some kind of evaluation? Are there auditors that just knock on the door out here and resting at Doy?
You just never know when they're going to show up and inventory all of your CX practices. Not that I'm aware of at this time, although that sounds like kind of a fun job, I'll be honest. No, but I think there are metrics that agencies report out to GSA around their customer experience, their net performer scores, there's trust scores. I know that there are agencies, TSA, for example, that have implemented regular surveying of their user base to collect metrics that they can inform that trust score. Annual surveys of constituents and parties that utilize services to collect feedback. The real cornerstone of any experience practice is getting to the root of where users are experiencing challenges and identifying where we're doing something really, really well, right? So we can replicate the things that we're doing really well, and we can solution to fix those challenge areas. And so that requires that continuous feedback, the data collection, the reporting, to identify those opportunities. And it's an ever evolving field, because things change all the time. People's expectations change, technology changes, as we've talked about. And then with that comes those expectation changes. So we need to be ready to be agile enough to shift and accommodate those changes to keep up with our users.
Yeah. 7 years ago, people would study websites and say you really have to have a responsive website so people can see it on their
I
phone.
remember that
And
time. Yes.
yeah, but now, well, of course, Angela. It's like, of course, Angela.
Obviously,
Yeah,
mobile first. Everybody
right.
designs mobile
I
first.
mean,
Yeah.
it's you don't even say it.
Right.
It's not a thing. It's like
It's been
I'm
an
going to
amazing time to be in this space. I've got to say,
right.
right? I got into this space in 2004, in the government space a few years after that, and just the massive growth and change. And like you said earlier, I've been kind of along for the whole time, and it started as constantly having to negotiate for a spot at the table, and now there's a seat set aside for the experienced folks at the table. And I think that's been one of the most exciting changes that's come out of this executive order and this focus on customer experience. I had an opportunity to talk to Dana Chisnell, who heads up the DHS CX Directorate. We were talking about AI implementation, and I said, do you and your folks have a seat at the table for that? We learned a lot in the digital wave that happened in the 2000s, and had a lot of lessons learned about not having those experience or the content folks at the table and letting technology lead versus the user and user needs. And she assured me they do, her and her deputy. So that alone kind of let me breathe a little bit easier, right? That we're already involved in those conversations. I spent a lot of time in my early career retrofitting websites, retrofitting things to be more user friendly, and now we're building things from that perspective, and that's been a huge culture shift that will ultimately help the government to meet their goal of building trust.
So one part of trust is eliminating user frustration. We know that.
Yes.
And you even mentioned Net Promoter Score, which is, kind of a marketing type term and concept. So is this done through surveys? Is this done through artificial intelligence, where perhaps artificial intelligence can take a look at a website and determine which are accessible and which aren't? I mean, and so this is a way to use artificial intelligence to end frustration. I mean, it seems like
most certainly
it's not your father's Oldsmobile. It's not Angela's 2005 web problems. These are the new web problems where how do you make sure everything's user accessible? Oh, really? Can you test that? Well, AI may let you do that.
Yes, definitely. AI can definitely be a great tool in this space. For those kinds of things. I mean, definitely for accessibility, for 508 compliance, for WCAG compliance. Those are things where AI can really streamline that process and ensure that we're putting out information that's accessible to everybody. The other big piece, it's the thing that agencies have really undertaken, is establishing voice of the customer programs. So I think, there's lots of ways to do that, lots of different tools, like you've said. I'm sure everyone has seen those surveys that pop up on websites at the end, where you just check this is good or bad, give us the smiley face, the negative face. Did you solve your problem today? To focus groups, to Google Analytics. It's really a holistic view of taking all of those data sources from across the company, across the agency, to make sure that you have that holistic view. When I was in supporting some agencies implementing these kinds of programs, we were communicating with public affairs, we were communicating with the call centers, we were communicating with leadership within the agencies, just identifying where all this information is held and putting it together in one place.
I spent a lot of time in data centers in Ashburn, and I once had a podcast called Inside Data Centers, and learned a lot about them. And when you negotiate with the data center, they use this fancy phrase called service level agreement, SLA. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about you and the customers and the service level agreement, and maybe there's got to be a citizen level agreement or a customer level. Look, hey, we are going to provide your information, blah blah blah, and if we can't provide it within a certain amount of time or a certain amount of, then we'll blah blah blah. So it seems like it's getting more and more responsive to the needs, and if you look at what's going on today in society, fewer and fewer people want to pick up the phone. People expect to have their answers instantly on the web, and the way to provide that is through customer experience and improvement. It's just it's pretty easy to write down UX, but pretty hard to deliver. I mean, it's one thing to, how much, how, How do you measure that? Really, what about feedback? What about heat map? You use heat map? Is that old fashioned? Is that new fashioned? What can that tell you? What about a bot? Can a bot do something? What about it? And so I'm just looking at a heat map here. Well, a heat map can teach a whole lot if you understand what information it gives you, can't it?
It definitely can. I mean, that gives you a quick view of what people are looking at on your website, on your web
Yeah.
page, right? Where are those clicks going? What's the hot topic? And that's exactly the kind of information that would then inform those broader CX metrics of what are people really coming for? What are they looking for? That can maybe help get rid of some of those. I already forgot the number you gave me of the number of websites that are out there, right? If people aren't looking for information, why is it still out there? We definitely have matured from the if you build it, they will come mentality of digital spaces, and are trying to be more purpose focused, more outcome driven, and that's the kind of data that you need to make those kinds of informed decisions.
Well, looking down the road, and maybe instead of the last 15, maybe the next 5 years, where do you see this whole concept of user interface in the federal government? Where do you see it's maturing? You think they're actually going to take advantage of the new tools, AI tools, and change? Or are they just going to say, hey, we got a legacy system and we're not changing? And I can't, something's going to have to change.
No, certainly. All the folks that I've been working with on the agency sides are all hungry for change. That's been one of the most exciting things about this is encountering so many folks on the federal side and other industry partners who are as passionate about connecting people to the services they need. So it's been really exciting to witness that evolution. One of the other things that I really think will become bigger and bigger as we look forward, there's been quite a few studies done, TSA and VA come to mind, comparing employee experience and customer experience, looking at that relationship between the two. And that's really growing. I've seen lots of articles and blog posts on those topics recently too, of that relationship between employee experience and customer experience. I've seen the term total experience used to just encompass the relationship between all of these employee, digital, customer experiences. And I'm really excited and hopeful that we'll continue to look at those things really holistically because it's an ecosystem and they all overlap in some way or another. I mean, at the most basic rate, a miserable employee is going to give a miserable customer experience. It's just human nature, right? We're emotional beings, whether we'd like to admit it or not. And there's just a direct correlation between those two measures.
And I can see a citizen complaining, but if you're employed by a large organization, whether it's Chase Bank or whether it's DOT, you're going to be reluctant to complain about the system you have to use every day, but that's got to be part of the whole discussion. Maybe that's the next level of the discussion is, okay, what about the thousands and thousands of federal employees that all of a sudden are working remotely and the system, it wasn't designed for people to work out of their homes, it was designed for
if you're waiting, I mean, I've been on the call with folks at different companies, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, everything's running slow today. My computer's running slow. I can't, this system is running slow. If we can fix those problems too, right, then that mitigates an employee issue, an employee experience challenge, and also the resulting customer challenge.
Yeah, kind of the big picture is human-centric design. Well, this has been a fun interview. Maybe next time we'll go inside data center, inside the EPA, and how they're improving their user experience of the people who work for the EPA. They may not like that one. I may get in trouble with that one. Well, I've been naming names and getting in trouble here. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Angela Mercado, Senior Director of National Security and Safety, Rely Group.